the brutal murder of a woman working at an asylum hotel. Rhiannon Skye Whyte was stabbed 23 times as she waited for a train home following a late shift in October last year. A man staying at the hotel in Walsall has gone on trial, accused of killing her. Also tonight, an illegal immigrant who threatened to kill Nigel Farage is jailed for 5 years. The Reform leader was targeted on TikTok by an Afghan man who arrived in the UK on a small boat. The video was viewed thousands of times.
I'm gonna come to England. I'm gonna pop, mother. What's up, man? You know.
I'm pleased with the judgment, but deeply, deeply concerned that this guy will be out free in 18 months.
Plus, a family's fight for justice. Tonight, I'll be speaking to the niece of a Kenyan woman allegedly killed by a British soldier. She has been in London to put pressure on the government to extradite the suspect. And reasonable punishment or child abuse. We'll be talking about smacking amid a new campaign to change the law in England and bring in a ban like Scotland and Wales. All that to come, and much more on the UK Tonight. We start tonight with the brutal murder of a woman who was working at an asylum hotel in the West Midlands. Rhiannon Whyte was killed in October last year. Deng Chol Majek, an asylum seeker staying at that hotel, went on trial accused of killing her today. Well, I'm joined now by Sky's Emma Birchley, who has been following this for us today. Emma, some disturbing detail coming up, but important to talk about what was heard in court today.
Yeah, I mean, really chilling detail. So October the 20th last year, and Rhiannon Skye Whyte, who was just 27 years old, left work. She'd been working at an asylum hotel in Walsall in West Midlands, where she'd been cooking and or serving food and cleaning. What she didn't realise as she made her way to the station, talking to a friend on the phone, was that she was being followed by a resident, according to the prosecution, from that hotel, Deng Chol Majek, from Sudan, who claims to be 19 years old. Now, according to colleagues at the hotel, he'd been staring at her all night long. Rhiannon went down onto the deserted platform, and according to the prosecution, it was then that Majek, using a screwdriver, stabbed her 23 times, the majority of those wounds to her head, incredibly deep wounds in places, and also her arm and her chest, probably in self-defence. Now, that friend she'd been speaking to heard her screams. The phone went dead. She phoned the police. The police contacted the hotel, and an employee headed to the station. Then the train that Rhiannon was meant to be getting on, the train arrived at the station. The driver saw her, and the guard came out, and with the employee from the hotel, they tried to help her. But 3 days later, very sadly, without regaining consciousness, she died in hospital. Now, according to the prosecution, it was Deng Chol Majek who had done this crime, who ran up the steps from the platform with her phone, threw it in the river, went to a shop, bought a drink, wandered back to the hotel, and then was seen dancing and singing, and the prosecution say clearly excited about what he'd done.
Yeah, the prosecution telling the court today that they are in no doubt that this man did it. That is the evidence they're presenting. They say there's no doubt about it at all. It's
so rare in court to get such a clear direction, and this is what Michelle Healy, KC, for the prosecution, told the jury. The prosecution say you can be sure that it was this defendant who murdered Rhiannon Whyte. His clothes have her blood on, his fingernails have her DNA under them. She had injuries from where she tried to defend herself. And she went on, this defendant has no answer to the prosecution case, and you can be sure that he is guilty. Important to say, though, Majek denies murder. He also denies possessing a screwdriver as an offensive weapon, and the trial continues tomorrow. OK,
Emma, thank you. Some really distressing detail there. Thank you. Now, in other news today, a migrant who came to the UK on a small boat has been jailed for 5 years. This is after he threatened to kill the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, in a video on TikTok.
I'm gonna come to England. I'm gonna pop, mother.
Well, this video was made by 26-year-old Fayez Khan, also known as Madapasa, and it was watched by thousands of people online. Mr Farage, who attended the sentencing today, described the post as chilling and said he is deeply concerned over the amount of time that Khan will actually spend behind bars.
In 18 months' time, this violent criminal, somebody with 17 convictions in Sweden, in 18 months' time, he will be in this country, living in a house of multiple occupancy or a hotel. He'll be free to walk the streets whilst his asylum claim is being judged. And the only reason we know about this guy is because somebody sent it to me on TikTok. And it makes me wonder, how many other Madapasas are there now in this country? Or will there be as the boats continue to cross the channel? So I'm pleased with the judgment, but deeply, deeply concerned that this guy will be out free in 18 months.
Home Office spokesperson said this: "We welcome this sentence. Threatening violence against anyone, particularly an elected member of Parliament, is never acceptable. We thank the police and all those involved in bringing justice in this case. When foreign nationals commit serious crimes in our country, we will always do everything in our power to deport them." The niece of a Kenyan woman allegedly murdered by a British soldier 13 years ago has told Sky News that she is fighting for justice not just for her aunts, but to ensure other young women don't suffer the same fate. The body of Agnes Wanjiru was found in a septic tank close to a British Army base 2 months after she disappeared in March 2012. Kenyan prosecutors have issued an arrest warrant for a British national who is accused of killing the 21-year-old. Today, her niece, Esther Njoki, made the family's case for the suspect to be extradited in a meeting with the Defence Secretary in Westminster this afternoon. I spoke to Esther after that meeting and I asked her what she wanted to get from her visit to the UK.
My reason for visit is to keep on putting pressure. One, because extradition must be done, and us as a family want the guy to be extradited in Kenya because he shouldn't be excused for any reason just because he had an army uniform. If he didn't want to be extradited in Kenya, he could not have killed Agnes. I believe before they are deployed to Kenya, they are always taken through the laws of the host country. So he knew, and then this is someone who mocked Agnes, so he should be extradited. And also, I'm also here because I want to change. The change must begin with us. It doesn't matter where I come from. I come from the same background Agnes came from. I know they took advantage because my family is not able. But again, I've seen things are changing since I stepped up and saying what is happening and trying to hold the government accountable. So I want change in the internal systems of the army because I believe they're the biggest challenge, because when this guy will be extradited, he'll have to uncover those people who helped him to get away with Agnes' murder. So if we can be able to change the internal systems, I think we'll secure a good future for other generations, because my family has had to go through hell, pain, frustration, just because of the systems which failed Agnes and failed her child.
Let's talk more about accountability, because you mentioned that. You want your aunt's killer to face justice in Kenya, but you also want accountability from those that knew in the army what had happened to your aunt, because the premise is that this was an open secret. Reports that the soldier involved confessed to comrades and it was reported to superiors but not acted upon. Is looking at accountability as important as bringing your aunt's killer to Kenya to face justice?
If we let them go, those who helped him, we are not solving anything here. It's not only Agnes' case. There are so many other cases. The Agnes case, it's only because it is controversial, political, and high profile. But again, us as the family, like Ava said, change begins with us, and I'm the change. And that's why I want to pave way even for other victims who are going through, who their cases have not been solved. So that's why I want all these people to be held accountable. Yeah. It will make the British Army learn that no one is immune or despite your power or position, because those who are in position right now, I don't think they'll ever let anything else happen like what happened to Agnes or even in the other cases.
Your aunt's is a high-profile, tragic case, but it's not isolated in terms of local women in your region being mistreated, and this has been going on for some time. I mean, it was clear there was a problem because the armed forces banned using sex workers in 2022. They identified that there was a problem and they brought that in to try and tackle it. Talk to me about what it's been like in your region for young women and girls.
Yes, I've seen people calling our girls sex workers, but I think even
the vulnerable women.
Yeah, vulnerable women. So I don't understand why people tend to stereotype women just because of being associated with sex. It can justify what they do. Again, this is someone who should protect you. So I don't understand why people justify all the atrocities that have been committed by the British soldiers to sex. Agnes is one of the cases which have always been engaged in sex work. I'm like, but you can't justify murder with sex. So, I mean, there are so many stories, heartbreaking stories, especially
and it's still
of sex.
Happening
and they're still happening.
13 years on.
There's the way when you can stop this. Ban the boys from going outside. Will not have these issues. But if they keep on letting them go outside, then the cases will not reduce.
What's this been like for your family over the last 13 years?
It's been hard, especially for her daughter now, who's understanding what happened. And she's now at the age where she understands what injustice means. And this is a matter that is taking a toll on her mentally. I've seen it, and that's why I'm always out there speaking out what happened to Agnes and advocating. We are expecting so many hurdles, especially now that extradition, and now we know, we have seen the face of the perpetrator, we know his name, so it is hard for us especially, because now it is like rubbing an old wound. So we are expecting so many hurdles to be ahead because of the extradition process. It might take longer, more than 5 years. That is to say, Agnes' daughter will be an adult. But what we want to is we secure a good future for other generations. Yes, the system failed Agnes, but we cannot let women and girls fail the same way Agnes was failed.
And Esther, it must not be lost on you the fact that you are the same age, 21, as your aunt when she was killed. And as you said, you're not just doing this for your aunt, but you're doing this for other women and girls in Kenya who you feel are being abused and mistreated, taken advantage of.
21 is a significant number to me. I'm the same age. Agnes passed away while I was 8 years, now I'm 21. And it's shameful and unfortunate that the government, at 21, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, fighting with a big government. I mean, I should be enjoying my life. But again, they turned me to be kind of a lawyer and an activist. But it's good because at least I'm seeing what I'm doing is really helping, because even other victims are confident that it is possible and they can get justice. So I'm here to secure a future for the girls. And when there is an issue of a woman, I think my party becomes a woman, because I wouldn't like any girl or woman to go through what Agnes went through. Although there are cases of men where maybe because of negligence when they leave the ordinances, how. So we are here to secure both futures of like every victim of the British atrocities.
Well, we asked the government to comment on that meeting today. The Defence Secretary John Healey saying this: I want to pay tribute to Esther, who is an extraordinary spokesperson for her family and for women who have suffered violence. Our government will continue to do everything we can to support the Kenyan investigation, secure a resolution to this case and finally bring peace to Esther and her grieving family. Former Premier League referee David Coote has pleaded guilty to making an indecent image of a child. The 43-year-old appeared at Nottingham Crown Court today over an allegation relating to a Category A video, the most serious kind, recovered by police back in February. Coote was granted conditional bail ahead of a further court appearance in December. Coote was sacked as a referee last December after a video of comments he made about the ex-Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp in 2020 came to light. Divisions stoked by the war in Gaza have extended far beyond the Middle East. Here in the UK, protests against the war were matched only by those over small boat crossings. Tensions have risen considerably, with several recent high-profile crimes being investigated as racially motivated. Our communities correspondent Lisa Holland has this report.
Numbers are falling at this Sikh place of worship. Some are staying away, afraid to walk the streets to and from the Gurdwara for fear, they say, of being racially abused. Resham Kaur is 76. She moved to Britain at the age of 18. Now she's waiting to be escorted home. Devoted to her faith, she refuses to stay away.
When I came to this country, I didn't fear my safety, but now I do, every day. It's a lot worse now. I don't remember feeling this unsafe ever before.
Security has been beefed up. But members of the congregation, like Sarah-Jane, who works in a bakery, and Mungat, who works at a salad farm, are giving up their days off to make sure people get home safely.
We have to do something. We can't just sit in silence, and we can't let the congregation just stay at home.
Pavinder Kaur is the vice president of the Gurdwara in Smethwick in the West Midlands, one of the largest in the country. She believes a summer of legitimate immigration protests outside hotels housing asylum seekers may have emboldened those with racist views.
People are more verbal about it now. They're not scared of the consequences.
And do you think it's entirely driven by this summer of protest?
It is, because before the summer, we felt safe.
In the West Midlands in the last 2 months, 2 incidents in particular have horrified the Sikh community. This attack on 2 taxi drivers near a train station and the rape of a young woman dragged into woodland from this busy road. Both incidents are being investigated as racially motivated. At the alleged scene of the rape, Sikhs are turning up every day from across the Midlands.
If you two want to get on your bikes and meet us at the top.
They're organising themselves to patrol the area.
Have you heard about what happened around here?
Trying to gather information from local residents.
So it's that camera there?
Almost playing amateur detective.
This is regularly used. Do you worry that it's sending a message saying you're taking the law into your own hands?
We're not a vigilante, if that's what you're asking. We're not vigilantes. We're in full support of the police.
These men say they don't want their patrols to be seen as threatening in any way, but they're conscious an England flag, being used by some as a provocative attempt to sow division, was put up a few days after the alleged rape.
We need to make it crystal clear that we're good people. We're just trying to do the right thing and support our community.
That sense of vulnerability is pervasive amongst minority communities. Security measures have also been stepped up at mosques around the country.
We have to engage with the wider community and prove that community that we love this country and its people. The Union Jack is our flag.
What unites Britain's fragmented society is fear among minority communities, even if the causes are different.
There are lots of really great examples of community cohesion around the country. But generally, there is definitely a sense of fragmentation. And, whether it's driven by, political concerns or what's happening internationally.
It's been a difficult few months for community relations as Britain continues to wrestle with its identity. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
So to come here on the UK Tonight, the IMF issues its World Economic Outlook. We'll be hearing from Ed Conway about whether it's a cause for concern for the Chancellor and the UK economy. Also ahead, a warning from UK security chiefs over the threat of cyber attacks from China. And we'll be taking a look at the new restrictions Instagram is rolling out on teen accounts.
life. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
New projections from the International Monetary Fund suggest that the UK will have the highest rate of inflation of any G7 nation this year and next year, driven by higher energy and utility bills. However, the IMF also predicts the UK will be the second fastest growing of the world's most advanced economies. Our economics and data editor Ed Conway has been digging into the numbers.
So the International Monetary Fund is meeting in Washington. As part of this big annual meeting, it brings out this. It's called the World Economic Outlook. It's essentially its 6 monthly opportunity to look at the state of the global economy. And it's worth reflecting, first of all, on what it says about the UK and other major economies around the world. Basically, the main thing people focus on with this is what it means for the growth rate. How much is income growing across the economy? And you can compare the UK with other countries around the world. And this is showing you, look, the UK versus G7 nations. This is something that I imagine Rachel Reeves will be very pleased about. The UK is the second strongest growing economy in the G7 this year. So 1.3% growth versus 2% in the US, and weaker growth throughout the rest of the G7, those industrialised economies around the world. And next year, I mean, it's not quite as strong as the rest next year, still 1.3%. Canada's a bit stronger. The US is stronger still. But again, it's kind of top half of the table. And I imagine the Chancellor will be pleased with that. She'll be talking about that. It's the kind of thing you probably might expect to hear her talk about when it comes to the budget. But here's the concern, OK? This is looking at overall growth rates, so overall gross domestic product growth. But you need to divide that by head of the population to get a sense of what it actually means for living standards. And of course, you know, the population in the country has been growing, largely thanks to immigration. And here's what happens if you do that. So if you divide these numbers by head of the population to get GDP per capita, look at the red bar, same year, OK, so 2026. And actually, GDP per capita, because of the higher population, is the weakest in the G7 in 2026. And actually, that's the number that most people will really focus on to give you a sense of just how much better off or worse off you're feeling. So that's GDP. How about inflation, OK? Because there's a lot of focus on what's going on with prices. You remember that big peak we had not long ago, the cost of living crisis. This is showing you inflation in the US, the euro area and China. And it's worth just looking at the UK and comparing the UK to other countries. Because look, here we are in red, and the UK had a higher peak, so this is prices going up, higher than most other countries around the world. But even more importantly, where we are right now, look, the UK is higher than the US, it's higher than the euro area, it's higher than China. And what's perhaps concerning is that the IMF says that's going to continue in the next few years. So this is, again, their forecast for inflation for this year, and the UK has the highest inflation rate in the G7, considerably higher than many in the euro area. And next year also, so all the bars are lower, so that's one thing. Inflation is coming down across the board, but still the UK higher than all the others. And it's not just inflation, it's also long-term interest rates. You remember we've been focusing a lot, haven't we, on what's going on with those bond yields, because it matters, it affects the interest costs we're all having to pay. Well, again, here's the US, here's the euro area, here's Japan, and here is the UK. And these charts, and this is charts produced by the IMF, are the kind of thing that are going to be discussed in Washington, where the Chancellor is going. And I imagine she'll have to explain, you know, part of the reason for why the UK is an outlier when it comes to interest rates and when it comes to inflation and what's going on with growth as well.
The UK Cybersecurity Agency has warned China poses a highly sophisticated and capable online threat. It comes as new data shows a 50% jump in significant attacks by criminals and hostile states over this past year. Car manufacturer Jaguar Land Rover and retailers M&S, Co-op and Harrods were among those targeted by high-profile cyber attacks. Our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes has more.
Is China a threat? And should the UK be worried about cyber attacks? In a word, yes. This is the National Cybersecurity Centre's annual review, and it talks about the cyber threat to the UK, with China listed first. China is described as a highly sophisticated and capable threat actor. Russia, Iran and North Korea, they are also called out as nation-state threats. There are also criminals causing cyber incidents, and actually, to give you a scale of the challenge, the review talks about how there has been a 50% jump in the last year compared to a year earlier in highly significant cyber incidents. That's 18 cases in total, which have had an impact on central government, large chunks of the population, essential UK services, or the UK economy. Think the cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover, on Marks and Spencer, on the Co-op and on Harrods, just to name 4 serious incidents.
Cybercrime is one of the greatest threats to our economy, to our businesses, and to the livelihoods of our workers.
The head of the NCSC gave a speech today where he called upon all companies, big and small, the leaders of businesses, to make sure they are prepared for cyber attacks. He says it's not a question of if an attack is happening, it's a question of when it happens and whether you're prepared. And he asks the question, do you have a plan for if the screens go blank? And if you don't, then it's time to act. And that's the headline of the review.
So to come here on the UK Tonight, we're going to be talking about smacking amid a new campaign to change the law in England and bring in a ban like Scotland and Wales. A host of famous faces and campaigners have signed a letter calling on the Prime Minister to ban smacking. They are urging Sir Keir Starmer to lead with courage and compassion to end what they have called a damaging practice. Smacking already banned in Wales and Scotland, but in England, the Children's Act allows smacking in cases where it is reasonable punishment.
Our children are less protected from physical harm than you or I are, you know? I cannot hit you because it's illegal, right? But I can use reasonable punishment on my child. That is so open to interpretation, it's so unclear, and it can be really, really dangerous.
At this day and age, we know enough about safeguarding children, about the impact that these issues have on children's mental health, how it leads to other issues further down the line. It's got to change.
I really don't know why the government haven't implemented this already, especially when so much research shows that smacking is not only ineffective, it's also incredibly harmful. I certainly don't want to raise my children teaching them that violence and love are intertwined, or that violence is the answer.
My patience has been running out since I was a child, when I was hit and I was harmed. And the people who beat me and hurt me were never ever held accountable for their actions because they were my parents. So my patience will never run out. I will fight till I die to protect children. And we're going to get there.
Well, I'm joined now to discuss this by paediatric sleep consultant Rosie Davidson, who has signed the NSPCC letter that was sent to the government today to ban smacking. We're also joined by Kieran Kelly from Be Reasonable. He is against the ban. And thank you both for joining us on the programme tonight. We have been here before. This debate has been rumbling on for decades now. And Rosie, I'd be interested to know, what is new about this approach from the NSPCC, this letter? What's the change in tack to try and make this government rethink this issue?
I think really this issue has been rolling on for so long that we've got to the point where something has to change, something has to give. We know so much more about child development that there really is no argument against making change. It's the most reasonable, logical and evidence-based decision that we can make.
So you feel it'd be reasonable to ban smacking, you know, updated research, we know more about children's development. Kieran, I mean, you know, your group is called Be Reasonable, and the argument is that reasonable punishment is OK for children. What do you think of what Rosie said there about the fact that we know more about the effect of smacking now?
Well, I think what you have to say, first of all, that this is, I'm sure this is very well-meaning, but what's being presented is rather misleading, it's somewhat misguided, because we know that the law already protects children. In fact, children rightly, because they're vulnerable, have greater protection in the law than adults, and that's as it should be. So what's being talked about here isn't really about protecting children. That is how it's been presented. I understand why people want to present it that way. But this is about, or what this would lead to, is the criminalisation of loving parents. That's what it's going to do. The law protects children, rightly so. So this is, by definition, going to deal with parents who are engaging only in the most trivial of actions and interactions with their children. It's going to outlaw what the law says is reasonable behaviour, which is very worrying. I think we should be concerned about the impact this is going to have in terms of family impacts from, you know, social services being involved with children, what the pressure that's going to put on social services, and you know, the detriment to people's career and the pressure that can bring. So this is not going to be something that is helpful for parents or for children.
Yeah, I'll put that point to Rosie about being misguided and criminalising parents. But just to be clear, Kieran, what is reasonable punishment? So when we talk about smacking, what's OK in your eyes, just to be clear?
Well, it's what the law says is that anything that leaves a mark is unreasonable. So what you're talking about here, and I think most parents really understand what's involved in this, you're talking about sort of the mild tap on the back of the hands or the back of the legs. When Wales were looking at this is some other important examples, because I think people have the wrong idea in their head about what's involved here. When Wales were talking about what was going to be included in this, they used as examples, the Welsh government, parents picking up a a tantruming toddler, in the supermarket aisle and restraining them, or sort of trying to get them into their car seat when they're kind of unwilling to go, that would be classified as assault. And I think most reasonable parents, and parents know their children best and know how to parent their children best,
Yeah,
horrified at the prospect that such reasonable actions could be brought into the ambit of the criminal law.
Yeah, we've all been there with a toddler tantrum. Rosie, I just want you to pick up on what Kieran said about you being misguided on this, and actually you're criminalising parents rather than protecting children. The Children's Act is there. It already protects children from harm.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that no mark doesn't mean no harm. So we need to be really careful about what we're talking about when we're talking about harming children. We know that restraining a child is not a criminal act. There are lots of cases where our children may be about to run into a road or do something dangerous and we need to restrain them. We don't need to smack them. It's very, very different. And let's face it, there haven't actually been a rise in prosecutions in Wales or Scotland who've banned it, and over 60 other countries across the world. Why are we so behind? Why are we pushing back so much on something that actually does protect children? It could protect children from violence in the home escalating. And if we can make changes on this level, then we're less likely to see further cases of abuse down the line.
Yeah, Kieran, that's a good point. I mean, what excuse is there to use your hands to discipline a child? It was pointed out in the video we showed before of the celebrities in Parliament Square, one of them saying, as an adult, you have more protection from physical harm than a child. In terms of disciplining children, there are other ways and means, and Rosie came up with something, quite compelling there. No mark doesn't necessarily mean no harm. We know how better adults are being protected now from things that we didn't speak about a couple of decades ago, things like stalking, coercive control. There are other harms there for adults that are being tackled, but this age-old harm for children is just, being let to continue.
Well, I think Rosie actually has put her finger on the problem that we're talking about here, because she said there, and she's involved with the campaign, but she said that, that a parent restraining a child wouldn't be caught by this. But of course, that's exactly the kind of behaviour that would be caught, because that would now be, or if the law were to change, would be classified as assault. It would. I mean, the Welsh Government, who were ahead of the game on this, they did research, they said that, they were very open about that. In fact, they also said that having put time and effort into trying to find evidence of the harms of smacking, have stated on the public record, and people can look it up, that there was no evidence of harm being caused by smacking. Now, I think we need to...
just out of interest, what harm has been done by introducing a ban on smacking in Wales and Scotland?
So the figures from a year showed that 2,800 incidents of smacking were reported, so that might be 2,800 families. 1,500, that's to social services, 1,500 of those, nearly half, were investigated, and about 125 went down a prosecution route. Now, the population of Wales is about 3 million, population of England is about 60 million, crude figures, I know. But if you scale those up, what you're talking about is something getting on for 55, 56,000 reports of smacking, something like 30,000 social services investigations and 2,500 prosecutions. Do we want the social services, who are, I think we would all agree, are pretty overstretched in the difficult job that they have to do, having essentially overnight another 30,000 things to investigate? Let's be very, very clear. It's incredibly important that genuine victims of abuse are looked after and the perpetrators of that abuse are brought to book. But to put loving parents into the same camp as abusers is going to make it harder for the genuine victims to be helped.
Yeah, Rosie, you were shaking your head to a lot of that. Do you want to come back on some of those points that Kieran's made?
Yeah, I think there's a huge point that we're missing here, which is that smacking doesn't teach our children anything. It teaches them, in fact, to mistrust their parents, who are the one person that should love them the most and care for them.
Rosie, how many people are actually smacking kids these days? In terms of, we talk about this being a generational thing. I grew up in the 80s. you know, it wasn't hard to see in a supermarket or in the street a child being smacked on the back of their legs by their parents. But you don't, I can't even remember the last time I saw it. So, you know, is this still a problem?
Well, we know that 85% of parents under 40 are against smacking, and that says something about the generational change, which is hopefully
so they're
coming.
not doing it?
Well, hopefully not, and hopefully there's change coming and modernisation of how we parent and letting go of archaic, outdated punishments.
Kieran, you know, I'll put that to you. Are parents smacking their kids nowadays? Because you made the point that if children are being abused, a ban on smacking probably isn't going to help those children. There are more serious laws and more serious matters to be addressed there than, you know, a ban on smacking.
Yeah, well, it's worse than that, isn't it? Because what I'm actually saying is not only is it not going to help them, it's going to hinder them, because if you give social services another 30,000 pieces of work to do, it's going to be harder to find the ones that they really need to be looking for. We know how many people are smacking now. I couldn't possibly say, but we do know that around about 80% of the adult population in Britain have said that their parents smack them. And the idea, I think most people find it pretty patronising at best to suggest that their parents are or were abusing them. I think it's people have different ideas about how to parent their children. I am not advocating for smacking. The Be Reasonable campaign doesn't advocate for smacking. We simply say that to have a disagreement about different parenting techniques, and because you think parents should do it in a different way, it doesn't mean you should be sending the police round to their door.
OK, Kieran, I'll give Rosie the last word to pick up on that point, because, you know, the majority of good parents know the difference between a reasonable punishment, a smack, a light tap, however you want to phrase it, and assaulting a child.
I think when it comes down to it, a smack tends to happen when parents have completely lost the ability to stay logical and focused, and they've lost their temper. And this means that we need better education and support for parents on how to handle these tricky situations with our children. We need help on how to tackle tricky toddler behaviour and other normal behaviour from children where they are pushing boundaries. We can still hold strong boundaries with our children, but we can do that in a loving, caring way where we're not resorting to physical violence, which has a long-term effect. It can increase aggression and anxiety long-term, and we have robust years and years of evidence to prove that. So I think that we need to really, really think closely and reflect. And it can be a painful experience for people to reflect on how they were treated as children. But we know that we can do better because we know better.
Rosie Davison, paediatric sleep consultant, really appreciate your time. And Kieran Kelly, spokesperson for the Be Reasonable campaign, really appreciate your time as part of this debate on smacking this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's just bring you some breaking news from the Middle East. According to information provided by the Red Cross, 4 coffins of deceased hostages have been transferred into their custody and are on their way to IDF and ISA forces in the Gaza Strip. This is coming from a joint announcement from the IDF and the ISA. It goes on to say Hamas is required to uphold the agreement and take the necessary steps to return the hostages. So within the last few minutes, we've received that breaking news that 4 caskets of deceased hostages have been transferred into the Red Cross's custody. 4 were handed over to the Red Cross yesterday. Of course, it's understood there are 28 deceased hostages due to be released by Hamas. So now 8 have been released to the Red Cross. 20 as yet have not been handed over by Hamas. More on that coming up after 9 o'clock tonight in the world. Now, we're going to discuss Meta's new restrictions for teenagers on Instagram. That's on the way after the break.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom
but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest Ndrangheta Mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here, drama over, full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Now, Meta is rolling out content restrictions on Instagram teen accounts. Teenagers using the app will now only see content that abides by a PG-13 cinema rating. Parental permission will be required to opt out, with the company also saying it will attempt to hide suggestive content and strong language as much as possible. I'm joined now by Ellen Room. Ellen believes her son Jules died because of an online challenge gone wrong, and you'll be familiar with Ellen from talking to us here on the programme on the issue of online safety a number of times. Ellen, it's good to see you. How are you?
Hi, good evening. I'm fine, thank you.
Good. What did you make of this announcement, a cinema-style rating for teen accounts?
I think anything that Instagram do that is going to help children has got to be beneficial. However, they've come out with promises before, and I think with the last lot of promises they came out with something like 53, and over half of them didn't work, or there were workarounds. So these are promising that they'll help children, but we're going to have to wait and see. They're actually not being rolled out until the end of December, I understand. So it's kind of wait and see what happens and hope they work.
Yeah, they also say that they're going to restrict content to teens' accounts as much as possible, which you could say was vague. It's worth reminding people watching our interview what kind of measures Instagram and Meta have put in place so far, because you, understandably, because of what happened to your son, have been following their response to online harm very closely.
I have, and only last week I reported something to them which was incredibly violent, and I reported it and said it was violent, and they came back with no violation. And I thought, there's no way you could have watched it and it not been interpreted as violent. And so is that a computer saying there's not a violation? Is it a human looking at it? So are we going to have this where we report things and it still comes back as no violation? I really hope this is a step in the right direction, that they've listened and they're going to do something about it. But we've seen so many times almost like a PR stunt from Meta that they're just saying what everybody wants to hear.
In terms of teens seeing content online and trying to get it removed, it is a really difficult process. And we've heard that teens will be able to opt out with parental permission. And we know how savvy teens are when it comes to the online world and tech. Far savvy than the likes of you and I talking this evening. Do you think that is going to work? Because, you know, it's always the way, isn't it? Something new comes out and people find a way around it. Nothing seems to be foolproof.
Their children are so much cleverer than we are with a lot of these things. And the thing that worries me is that they can have some multiple accounts still. There's still no age verification for when they log on, although their platform says that their software is going to try and work out what age they are, I guess, by what they're searching for. But children, are they going to figure a way around that? You know, maybe if they look for 20 recipes, all of a sudden they're going to think they're an adult again. I don't know. And are they going to have one account where the parent thinks they're safeguarding their child with this potentially new features, and actually they've got another 10 accounts which they've put in a fake age and watching whatever they like? How are they going to control that? That they haven't seemed to do anything about the multiple account situation or checking ages properly.
Yeah, because it's all about the algorithm, isn't it? I was talking to a parent the other day who has a teen on Instagram, and they said that they regularly just have a quick scroll through and click or watch some happy content, some silly videos to try and influence that. You know, it's just parents trying to do whatever they can because they hear so much of this and they think it will never happen to my child. But, you know, as you know, it can happen in the blink of an eye. What would you like to see done? I know I talk to you about this a lot, but in terms of what Instagram can do that you think will be effective, what is it you want from them?
I think proper age verification, proper accountability.
As in like a passport ID, fingerprint, facial recognition?
If we're going to be subjected to government ID, is that why they're bringing it in at 13? Is that so that it can help the social media side of things? I don't know. But they need to do something so that we actually know which teens are on their platform to start with, and we haven't got children pretending they're any old age. And then really it needs to be regulated. What is shown on their platform needs to be regulated, not independently monitored by Instagram or a computer. It needs to make sure that children are not seeing harmful content, and with proper accountability, with a duty of candour that, you know, they correct what's on their platform, you know, that they if they find a problem, they fix it. And not this hide behind everything, oh, we don't have any problems on our platform, when everybody knows that they've got dangerous content and not doing enough about it. I just think there needs to be some morals in the company to think if it was their children, you know, what would they be happy for children to see, and start making some proper changes.
Ellen, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming onto the programme to react to Instagram's latest move to try and make their platform safer for teens. Appreciate your time. I'm sure we will talk again, Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you. Fingers crossed.
Well, Meta has said that its rollout of the new default settings for teens will continue to give parents ways to share their feedback about what content they think is appropriate. They say they'll do this through in-app surveys and provide ways to flag content that they think should be hidden from teens. And if you have been affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans at any time, 116123, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. Right, let's have a look at the day's sports news. David Garrido is standing by.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Typical Touré, absolutely brilliant. Yaya Touré tries to place it and does. Yaya Touré may just have delivered the Premier League title as well.
When I started from my academy, I always loved goal. During my career, he was thinking about me not defending or running backwards, but I always keep in my mind always in the same way, like enjoying football, share that with fans, and be happy with something, you know what I mean? Because I've never been happy chasing people. I've always been happy when people chasing me. I was playing midfielder, and sometimes I have to do my duty as defending, try to protect the defense, the fullbacks. But it's only one ball. Two guys can do that. Me, I have to attack, and I've always been obsessed with goal.
You're a product of the ASIC Academy in the Ivory Coast. It's produced loads of amazing players.
What was special about that academy specifically?
Yeah, it's pure about football and passion. Then desire, you know. And at a young age, when we learn tactics, but we were more technical. We learn as well about the different position as well, playing the games, because in our development as well and education, we know we're gonna face different coach during our career and we need to adapt. When I arrived in academy, for 2 years, I've been playing without shoes, learning degrees, learning touching balls, skills my feet, understanding all the area of my feet. My feet was getting hurt. If I take my shoes now and you see my feet is a bit ugly. When I learned how...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, that's all from the UK tonight. We will return tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next, following us, it is Mark Austin. He is live in Jerusalem. He'll have the latest from the region on the world. That breaking news tonight, the bodies of 4 deceased hostages have been handed over to the Red Cross by Hamas.